I propose the concept of waking up, and I think it's kind of paradoxical to propose the concept of waking up as one of the key concepts in psychoanalysis, because psychoanalysis famously started with Freud's great monograph, great book, the founding book, The Interpretation of Dreams, the Traumdeutung, which appeared in 1900 and sort of inaugurated a century. And according to Freud, this was the first scientific account of dreams, because dreams up to then were sort of a realm of divination or mysticism or occult meanings, divinity sending us some signs in dreams, etc., etc. So Freud really attempted to do the proper scientific work of disentangling, of work of interpretation on the enigmas of the dream and show the mechanisms that condition the dreams. And at the basis of this was his contention that the dream is a wish fulfillment. Now, if I take waking up as a concept, then this seems to be beyond the interpretation of dreams. This is not part of interpretation of dreams. And the question to ask is first, why do we dream? Freud's proposal throughout the book is that the dream is the guardian of sleep. So one of the basic functions of dream is that dream is the guardian of sleep, which means that any external disturbances that may occur, the dream integrates them, the dream narrativizes them, and by integrating them, it sort of keeps them at bay and makes it possible for the sleeper to go on sleeping. So the dream sort of protects the sleeper. And when the external disturbances get too big, then one eventually has to wake up. The dream can no longer function as this buffer. But then looking more closely, this is not exactly what happens. But there's a very common experience that one actually wakes up not because of external disturbances, but because something is produced in the dream, a traumatic moment is produced in the dream, a nightmarish moment is produced by the dream itself that actually makes us wake up. So there is a paradox in this, that the dream itself has a tendency to produce a disturbance which is bigger than any other external disturbances, an internal disturbance produced by the logical wish fulfillment of the dream itself. And when one comes to this point, this trauma, this uncanny moment, then one has to wake up because of the disturbance the dream itself produced. And well, Lacan had a brilliant formulation of this. I mean, Freud puts it in this way, but Lacan had a brilliant formulation which is very simple. And he says, why do we wake up? We wake up in order to be able to go on dreaming. So something is produced by the dream which makes us wake up to the constituted, real, familiar reality. But then precisely this waking up into this familiar reality is our continuation of the capacity to dream on. But something was produced on the edge between the dreams and this constituted reality, which went lost, which was obfuscated by our waking up to the familiar reality. So it's the moment of the real, impossible moment of the real, which one cannot quite hold on to. It emerges only on the verge between the dream world and the constituted real world, something which goes lost before this real world is fully constituted, a traumatic moment that gets lost. And if one wants a spectacular demonstration of this, one should look at Franz Kafka, who was actually Freud's contemporary, not only Freud's contemporary, but somehow Freud's, maybe in many ways, Freud's alter ego or Freud's double, because ever so many Kafka stories happen precisely in the modality of waking up. And if you look at the trial, Joseph K. wakes up in the first paragraph because two men come to his bedroom and actually wake him up and present him with the indictment. Or in the castle, the land surveyor K. falls asleep on the bench on the first page and is then rudely woken up. Or most spectacularly, best known is the Verwandlung, the metamorphosis, when the poor Gregor Samsa wakes up as a huge insect. So in Kafka, you have everything in Kafka, so many stories in Kafka start with this moment of waking up, but you wake up to a wrong reality. You don't wake up quite to the constituted familiar reality. And it is as if this edge between the dream world and the constituted real world is protracted in Kafka, and is protected, is kept on throughout the novel, through hundreds of pages. It's like one is not quite dreaming any longer, but one is not quite awake to the real reality. It's like a protected dream, protected precisely this impossible in between the two, between the dream world and the constituted reality, which emerges there. And Kafka shows this fidelity precisely to this place. And I'll just take one quote from Kafka. It's a very simple quote from the trial. Waking up is the riskiest moment. If you manage to get through it without being dragged out of place, you can relax for the rest of the day. So you can see it's the riskiest moment when everything vacillates on the edge between dream and reality. And Lacan actually also made a big case precisely of this encounter of the real in this in between. And let me give one more quote by Lacan. It's not a quote. Thus the encounter, forever missed, has occurred between dream and awakening, between the person who is still asleep and whose dream we will not know, and the person who has dreamed merely in order not to wake up. If Freud, amazed, sees in this the confirmation of his theory of desire, it is certainly a sign that the dream is not a fantasy fulfilling a wish. There is something in dream which goes beyond this fantasy. And there is something the dream produces on this verge which goes also beyond the fantasy, sustaining the usual constituted reality. And so in psychoanalysis, there is something like a wake-up call, like show fidelity, persevere with this moment, which is neither dream nor the constituted reality, this moment between the two fantasies. This is where some real emerges. And this is like, ideologists always thrive on wake-up calls. Like, up to now you have been blind and dreaming. Now wake up to meaning. This is what you should do. This is what will fill your life with sense. This is where precisely, this is an anti-ideological interpellation works in this way. But what is at stake here? It's actually a wake-up call to something that doesn't make sense, to something that it gets obfuscated, that gets repressed in the usual reality, which makes sense. This is the uncanny moment one should keep fidelity to. One should try to conceptualize. This would be my take on one concept of psychoanalysis.